Hey guys, Tammy here, and today we're going to talk about why narcissists want vague child custody orders. A lot of times they do this so that in the future they can kind of manipulate on a case-by-case basis, right? As situations come up, as different holidays come around, one year I can say it's supposed to be this way, and the next year I can say it's supposed to be that way, and if the orders or the settlement aren't super specific on custody stuff, that leaves me more leeway to kind of manipulate things to my own interpretation of however I want it to be. It's really important that you make sure, vagueness can have some flexibility, I suppose, but most of the time when I'm talking to people that are dealing with a narcissistic ex, I'm telling them you don't want vague orders, you want specific orders, okay? The problem is a lot of times people don't even know what specifics, like what does that mean? So that's what I'm going to try to educate you on in this video. If you like my content, please hit like on this video and subscribe to the channel so that you get notified as new videos are released, okay? And as always, please share on social media. So many people needing help on all of these little topics, and the only way I can reach that many people is through you. I am one person and I can't reach everybody that's dealing with this on my own. I need your help. When we have vague orders, like I said, it gives the narcissist the ability to kind of manipulate on a case-by-case basis. So when we start looking at the specifics of a custody order, the obvious two things are the day-to-day schedule, right? And the holidays. That's the two kind of big pieces. And then we kind of have vacation time. And then a lot of times, depending on the age of the child and all that kind of stuff, sometimes there'll be parameters for communication between the households, or like communications with the child when they're with the other parent. There can also be things about pickups and drop-offs, things about childcare programs. Everybody's keeping each other informed of addresses. Nobody moves the child out of the county. All these on and on and on. But what usually happens is the areas that I see the biggest contention points are usually around those major rocks of the parenting schedule and the holiday schedule. Okay. And then I would say if I was going to pick a third and fourth, it would probably be the transportation and the communication with the child when they're in the other parent's world. Those are probably kind of the four big things. The problem is a lot of times, different narcissists manipulate in different ways. So a lot of times you can think that you covered your bases and you can think that you got all the details in there. And then after the fact, you'll be like, wow, we didn't close that loophole. They've already found a loophole. He or she has already found a loophole. And that does happen. And I have a lot of people that come out and go, well, why didn't my attorney think of this? Well, because your attorney can't think of every single thing that another human being could possibly manipulate in the whole entire world, especially if your attorney isn't really, really versed on narcissism. They're going to kind of go, oh, any reasonable person would blah, 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 blah. And they're just going to kind of see it as okay, right? So in the parenting plan, where we usually go is usually you look at things in a 2-week cycle, right? Because 1 week is 7 days, which is an odd number. So the court usually deals with things in a 2-week repeating pattern because that's 14 days, which is an even number. And so what it will designate is it'll say the pickup and drop-off times. Like it might say, let's say you have a 2-2-3 with your kids, okay? It'll say mom to pick up from school at, on Monday, and drop off, have the kids through drop off at school on Wednesday morning. Wednesday afternoon, dad will pick the kids up after school and then drop them off on Friday morning at school. Mom will pick the kids up Friday night, have them till Monday morning. Then the next week it flips, right? Dad will pick them up Monday after school, have them till Wednesday morning. Mom will pick up Wednesday after school, have them till Friday morning. Okay, here's the hiccups that happen. All right, you ready? And if you're just starting on this road and you haven't created a parenting plan yet, then, take some notes here because these are gems, all right, that I'm about to give you. When you have that parenting schedule, Well, here's the thing. First of all, what is the time that the transition actually occurs? I mean, okay, it's after school. That's fine. So, all right, if school gets out at noon, let's say they have an early release day or a parent-teacher conference day or some sort of teacher in service that gives them a shorter day. Is it still that parent picks up on that day? Do one of the parents work where they wouldn't be able to pick up on that day? Do you have after school care where it's not going to matter? Attorneys don't always think of all that stuff because they don't know what your day-to-day detailed things are, usually. And so you have to kind of think through the logistics of how this is going to work. And so let's say that you just say, okay, it's after school. Or the other thing that happens is you need something that says if school is not in session, right? So when Thomas would write agreements, he would say, mom to pick up from school at 3 p.m. on Monday, or if school is not in session at 3 p.m. at dad's house. Okay. And then mom would pick up at dad's house at 3 p.m. if it was a non-school day, right? So that way you have designated what happens if it's a school day, what happens if it's a non-school day. The reason that I also kind of mentioned, like, when does that transition occur? Is it after school or whatever? A lot of times I've seen people argue over when their parenting time ends. It's like, okay, if you're to drop off the child at school on Monday morning, then does your parenting time stop Monday morning, or does your parenting time stop after school on Monday? Because what if the child gets sick at school during the day? Who's going to get them? You or the other parent? Like, these are the things I see people argue about after the fact. You need to really have specific, transitions will be after school. If the child is ill prior to transition time, the current on-duty parent will pick the child up from school, whatever, if you think that's going to be an issue. Look, if you don't work or you work from home or whatever, and you're like, I don't care, I'll go get my kid when they're sick anytime. I don't care whose parenting time it is. Cool. Don't worry about it. No big deal. But this is something you have to think about when it creates an issue for you or you're going to be arguing with the other parent. The other thing about pickups and drop-offs that I was saying earlier, I always like to have the receiving parent to pick up, because I think that's a happy occasion for the child. They haven't seen that parent. That parent comes to the other parent to pick the child up. The child transitions and they're happy to see them. If the child's in the car with you and they've been with you for a few days and you're taking them to the other parent and they're about to leave you, that's a negative experience for the child, right? Being picked up by somebody I haven't seen for a few days is a positive experience, but having to leave somebody I've been with is a negative experience. Okay, so Thomas used to say, I hate saying goodbye, but I love saying hello. That's what he used to tell his kids. So think that through too, because especially littler ones, you'd be amazed how emotional those transitions can get for little ones. All right. On holidays, a lot of times I see people do things like, oh, mom will have Christmas in odd years, dad will have Christmas in even years. Okay, and what's Christmas? You have to define the holiday. You don't just state when it rotates. You have to define what it is. So some people say, oh, well, we're going to go Christmas Eve, 10 a.m. to 10 a.m. Christmas morning is one parent, and 10 a.m. Christmas morning to 10 a.m. the following morning is the other parent. And we're going to alternate those days each year, that 12-hour window. Now, I personally don't like that because you can never travel, you can never do anything without the cooperation of the other parent if you have the holiday split like that. I'd rather either have the whole holiday or have none of it. Now, I know when your kids are little, that's hard. Thomas's kids were little when we first started this. And, we just found other ways to do the tradition. We actually used to open gifts on New Year's Eve when it wasn't our year for Christmas, because when it wasn't our year for Christmas, it was our year for New Year's. So we opened gifts on New Year's. And then the boys got to where they're like, oh, we want to be with you on every New Year's. Can we come over? And I'm like, well, we're not having a party. You're not here this year. So I didn't plan anything. They got a little bit older, 7, 8, 9. They started asking to come on New Year's because their mom had young babies and wasn't really going out to do anything for New Year's at that point. And they knew that we traditionally had a big celebration here. And so they would call up and want to come. But you have to think about how's that defined. So like in Thomas's, I say our, I guess because I lived it, but in Thomas's agreement with his ex-wife, they defined Christmas as the 23rd through the 27th. So transition was the 23rd at, like, I don't know, 3 p.m. through the 27th at 3 p.m., something like that, because her family lives about 8 to 10 hours from here, and she wanted to be able to drive and spend the holiday with her family when it was her year. So that's how they defined it, as like that 4 or 5 day spread. So they kind of thought about that when they were putting together the agreement so that it could accommodate those things. So it overrode the regular schedule. Holiday always overrides the regular schedule. So when the 23rd at 3 p.m. came, no matter whose parenting time it's supposed to be, if it was her year for Christmas, even if that's our regular day, she gets them, right? People get confused about this too. She gets them. And then the 27th at 3 p.m., that's the end of her holiday time. But if that's her regular day, she still keeps them. If it's not her regular day, then she would come back to us. Okay, same thing like when people do weekends. Like a lot of times it'll be a holiday weekend, like Thanksgiving weekend, and they'll think, oh, well, the other parent had the weekend before, and the other parent has the weekend after. So if they get Thanksgiving weekend, then I should get their weekend after because it puts it back on the every other. No, that other parent would get 3 weekends in a row, and then you would go back to your normal rotation. So the rotation never gets flipped. Okay, the holiday just overrides whatever's there temporarily, and then you just shift right back into it. You have to understand how all that works to kind of know where some of the places are going to be that your narcissist is going to try to manipulate and use. I'll say this real quick on communication is I don't like communication between the households. I understand sometimes if your child's really little, it's difficult. But honestly, I find that the calls and the video calls and all that with a young child is more stressful. Or older child, any age child, it's usually more stressful on the child than anybody. And I see children develop anxiety and all kinds of things from this communication back and forth between the households. Really, to the extent you can, you want to just let them enjoy being in the other parent's world and not bother them. Let them do their thing. You do your thing. Let them do their thing. They'll get adjusted. If you're early on and you've just separated and you've got a really young child, okay, that might be something you want to do for a little while. But you don't need to do that permanently, and especially as your child gets older, 7, 8, 9, 10, where they understand you're still there even though they're not with you, you need to let go at that point because those communications back and forth just end up causing more conflict because it gives that narcissistic person a way to kind of reach their hooks into your world, so to speak, and they will use it to create more conflict. So if you're going to have a communication provision in there, I always tell people do like a window, say between like 5 and 6 p.m., whatever your window you want it to be, an hour or two every day, a window, and say for no more than 10 minutes, no more than 15 minutes, whatever. Because if you just say they can have a daily phone call, well, if they're narcissistic, they're probably going to stay on the phone with the child for as long as they possibly can. And if it's not as long as they think you need to be on, they're going to blame you probably for not facilitating that right or whatever the case may be. Okay. But honestly, try to avoid the communication between the households as much as you possibly can. So I hope that's helpful. If you'd like to learn more about my services, how I can help you figure out specifics for your parenting schedule so that you can avoid these vague orders that are then difficult to deal with, the orders you paid thousands of dollars for, right? And now they're hard to deal with. You don't want to have that outcome. So let's think about it ahead of time. If you want to learn about that, you can go to divorceuniversityonline.com/VIP-coaching. There's a link on that page. You can book a time to speak to a member of my staff, learn about my services, and how I might be able to support you in this process. See you guys next time. We'll grow in number, fueled by them to see the horizon, turn us to thousands.